Welcome to Chalk Talk, Danville Public Schools weekly news magazine. I'm Diane Locker, your host. In the beginning of the year, we had a show here with Dr. Stanley Jones, our new superintendent, and we talked about things that he had done in the past, why he had come to Danville, all of those things that we wanted to know at that time. What we're going to be doing in this show is we're going to be looking at what's happened since the first day of school. And Dr. Jones, we talked that day. I remember we did a show. We were over at George Washington High School.
Yes.
And we talked about you coming to Danville. And I said to you, but today, the first day of school is where that rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
No matter how long you'd been here, that was the important thing. Kids came back to school. So
Correct.
that's what we're going to talk about now. I think, what's it been, 4 months?
This is the beginning of the fifth month.
Beginning of the fifth month.
Yes.
So what did Dr. Jones find out from first day to getting ready to go into 5 months? What sticks out in your mind about Danville Public Schools?
A couple things. I think first of all, there's that our staff and our students every day are proud to be members of Danville Public Schools and are glad to be in school every day and are working toward being successful as students. I think that's, I'm not sure that the community always views us collectively that way, because the bad news always makes the news, if you know what I'm saying, but the majority of things that are happening in Danville Public Schools are positive. So
have you been able to spend time in the schools like we talked about?
I have. It's been tough here past few weeks, but yes, I've spent a considerable amount of time in our schools, but I don't think I'll ever be able to spend as much time in our schools as I'd like to.
Oh, I think that'd be very difficult.
But it's I think that certainly students appreciate, I think, when the superintendent visits, and I usually do that. You know this from last time. I do that unannounced. I just show up and I walk in the classrooms.
What I thought, I think it was in the first show that we did of the year when we were at GW, and you were standing out in the hall.
Right.
I was really amazed at how many hugs you got from the students, how easy it was for you to talk to the students, but more important, how easy it was for them to talk to you.
Well, I think what I love about young people is they're genuine. I mean,
Yes.
what you see is what you get. And I also think that that our students have the ability to size up an adult and know their heart. And so I'm fond of saying it this way when I have a conversation with a student. I'll say, I'm a superintendent of schools, but I work for you.
But there was something there that they knew that you were approachable.
Something.
And it's not that they knew you were superintendent or what. They knew you were some authority figure there.
Right.
But they knew you were approachable.
Right.
And that's very important.
Well, hopefully they feel that the role of the superintendent is really to serve students.
That's it. That's what we're all here for.
Exactly.
Before we get into some of the workings of the school system and things that you've been doing, I want to talk about one of the goals that you talked about in the beginning, and that was reaching out to this community.
Right.
And getting this community involved in our schools. Tell me about some of those things you've done, and let's start off with why you're growing that mustache.
Well, I'm growing the mustache for the Boys and Girls Club as a fundraiser. So they're a group of leaders in the community that have agreed to not shave, I think, through the middle of December. And so I think tomorrow, as a matter of fact, we'll do a check-in. We'll take a picture of my growth. But the goal is to raise funds for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Danville.
What are some of the other things you've gotten involved in? I'm sure you've ended up on boards and that type of thing. What type of, let's say, community input do you see? How have you been working with, let's say, businesses and different entities in the community? Well,
I guess if I were going to mention two organizations, the primary two that I've worked with have been the Boys and Girls Club as well as Rotary. So I was just inducted in the Rotary. But I'm co-chairing a Education Advisory Committee with Averett University with Sue Davis, who's a retired superintendent from Danville Public Schools. So she and I are collaborating together. So I'm certainly working with Averett. I've visited the Introduction to Education class at Averett University. I'm already recruiting potential teachers for Danville Public Schools. And I participated in a conference, I think it was 2 Saturdays ago. The Alliance for Excellence had a student leadership conference at Danville Community College. I've been to 2 of those events now. And I'm working, with there's a Center for Community Engagement at Averett, and then there's also the Danville Regional Foundation also has this community engagement initiative that they're working with. So we're partnering with them to try to determine how we can have our students be involved in community service activities, et cetera.
Didn't mean to make you run through that, but I think it's so important for people in the community to understand that every time you are engaged in one of these committees or on a board or something like that, that's saying to the community, you're representing our school system, you're representing our students. You're right there that if anything comes up, you can get us involved.
Absolutely.
Right away,
Yeah.
and get us involved the way we want to be involved.
Exactly.
You're there, you can give that input. And you talk about DCC, you talk about Averett. Those are very important parts of our community.
Absolutely.
They may be colleges, universities, but we're all in education.
Absolutely. And I got to mention several others too. I've met with the police chief. I've met with, I've met with the president of American National Bank. So any community member that just wants to have a conversation about where our schools are. I've met with, certainly I've met with the mayor. I've met with the director of economic development for Danville for Danville City. So the goal really is to try to, the heartbeat of a school, heartbeat of a community is the school system.
It is. It's the one thing that we all have in common.
Exactly. And so it's about a collective investment in our future, which are our students. So my role really is to help the community understand the things that we're trying to do to prepare our students for the future, and but also to be held accountable as a school division about where we are in terms of our performance, et cetera. So to talk very candidly with people and helping them understand, understanding how to evaluate a public school system is a very complex issue.
Very complex.
And so we need to have very candid conversations about what that means. Is it a test score that really determines the success of a school division, or is it the type of students you produce? And the answer is it's both. So we need to talk about the character, the collective character of the students that we have in our system, but we also need to talk about student achievement. Both matter.
Oh, yes. Now also, I think we've had in some magazines here.
Yes.
I mean, big picture. I mean, like a front page type thing.
Right.
This is SOVA. This is put out by the Danville Register and Bee.
Yes.
And I believe this came out in the first of the year and talked all about who is Stanley Jones. It's
a little humbling. I'm not. I'm a person that that doesn't necessarily like the notoriety of being a public official, but I also recognize the importance of being the voice of the school division, being the spokesperson for the school division. So
I was going to say, you are, that is the one thing, you are the spokesman for the school district. We talked about that in the beginning of the year.
We did.
But you've really come through, I think, in the last 4 months as the spokesman of the school system. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that have been in the press. Every single thing that I've read in the press, the quotes are from Dr. Stanley Jones, and that's nice, and that's very important to the community too.
It is.
It brings you closer to those parents out there and those students out there.
Some folks would describe a superintendent as a head cheerleader.
Hey, okay.
So I mean,
we'll get pom poms for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, also in the Showcase magazine, this is a magazine that's distributed throughout Danville. You're going to be doing a monthly.
For 6 months. So I did a column. I guess it was in October, which really talked about two things: what's the role of school superintendent? So helping the community understand what my job is, what my role is, but also why did I come to Danville? The November edition features what are the 4 goals I really want to focus on as superintendent, and then the next edition, which will come out in December, will deal with what is student engagement. When we start talking about student engagement, what does that really mean? And then I'll do one each month, and the goal there really is, again, to really connect to the community, be a spokesperson for the school division, and help the community understand the direction that the school division is moving in.
What I want to do now is, we're going to take a short break, because I want to come back from the break and I want to talk about some of those things that, let's say, have been in the local media. that I would like for you to give us a little more explanation on.
Okay, be happy to do it.
Be sure to come back after the break, and we're going to get more into some of the things that have been going on in the last 4 months here in Danville Public Schools.
Hello, my name is J.D. Edmonds, and this is my wife,
Janine Edmonds.
I am the Barnum Booster President, and I'm encouraging all you parents to get involved with your child's education, get involved with the community, and show your support for your kids' school.
Continue to be that bridge between the community, school, and family.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexandra Reddy and I'm the Beta Club President here at Galileo Magnet High School. Let me tell you about Beta Club. Beta Club is a national academic club that focuses on community service. And in fact, our motto is let us lead by serving others. So every month, the Beta Club here at Galileo completes a service project for our community and also for our school. And then in February, we travel to the state convention where we compete with other schools in the areas of English, science, social studies, talent competitions, and it's a really awesome experience. But I also have the honor of being the Virginia State Beta Club President, an election that I won back in February at the convention. So this means that I have to travel to at least 2 other state conventions this year. There's North Carolina, South Carolina, all across the country that I am able to travel to. So I'm very blessed to be the state president, and I'm excited for what the year holds and making Galileo proud and making Virginia Beta proud.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, I'm having a conversation with Dr. Stanley Jones, our superintendent. We're talking about what's happened in Danville Public Schools since he first took over and from the first day of school. We're going into our 5th month, and we're talking about things that have occurred since first day of school. Dr. Jones, earlier we talked about your community involvement, which has been extensive. What I'd like to do now is, in the beginning of the year, you and I talked about things that come out in the media.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when it comes out in the media, they don't have the time nor the space to really elaborate on things. So I'd like to go back through some things that I saw in the newspaper, or maybe saw on TV, and talk to you a little bit more about it and let you kind of let the community know what your feelings are.
Okay.
And where you came from. And
Okay.
let's talk about going back to the first of the year. You made some changes in discipline referrals.
Yes.
And those changes, I think the most significant thing about them was that we're not going to go to the board quite as quick as we went to the school board before. We're going to start off at the school level. Now, talk to me a little bit about that, what you meant, what changes you made.
Okay. Well, when you start looking at a student behavior in a school, you want to try to address issues of behavior with the folks that have the most direct impact and direct relationship with students. So that's teachers, administrators, et cetera, so the principal. What we were doing before is if a student had a violation of the code of conduct, it was almost like in some ways we bypassed the principal and it came straight to central office. Somebody in central office dealt with it. Well, we don't have those kinds of relationships with students. We're here to support what happens in schools. We don't have direct.
When you're saying we, you're talking about people here at the district office.
People here at the district office, we're not in schools every day, in classes every day with students, so we have sort of a more indirect relationship with students. So anytime we're having a student who's struggling with behavior issues, that's a conversation that needs to occur at the school level with the principal.
That's where the behavior occurred in most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the principal needs to have a conversation with that student and that student's parent about what our expectations are, and more importantly, if a student's struggling, what we can do to support the students improving.
Isn't this pulling parents and teachers and principals into the whole cycle quicker
Absolutely.
than we've done in the past?
Absolutely.
And maybe getting that parent and teacher and principal involved, it doesn't have to go further.
That's exactly why we do it.
Okay.
You know, the goal there is can we intervene at the point of the misbehavior and try to correct it by getting support from the principal, the parent, the student, and anyone else in the school that can support that student's behavior improving. So it's all about relationships. and all about trying to understand why a student may be struggling with their behavior and what we can do to address it.
I've heard you talk about, sounds like a negative word, but punishment and behavior. And I heard you talk in a meeting one time, and I loved the way that you talked about, let's say, more or less making the punishment fit the crime, or talk to me a little bit about that in your words,
Okay.
because you have a very unique way of putting that.
Well, philosophically, the issue of punishment is, why do we punish people when they misbehave? We're trying to correct behavior.
Right.
So the challenge you run into then is, if you try to uniformly punish people when they have a certain violation, it may not take that level of punishment to change the behavior. So the goal is to change the behavior and minimize the disruption in school. So what we're trying to do now is impose a consequence that's appropriate to change behavior. That doesn't look the same for every kind of code violation, and it doesn't look the same for every child. So we're really trying to customize the code of conduct and our protocols for addressing the behavior for the ultimate goal, which is to improve it.
That's what you want to do, where the ultimate goal is to improve the behavior in the child.
Yeah, I'm fond of saying it this way. If I have two different children and I have to do this with one child to correct behavior and something more severe with the other, they're not going to look the same in terms of what I do with those children.
But that's okay.
But the ultimate goal is to try to get the behavior to change.
Okay.
Same thing applies to the way we do discipline in public schools. And so the fundamental question is, does punishment change behavior? And the answer...
That is the one statement I've heard you make. That
Right.
I'm glad you finally came up with it, because that's very important.
It's critical.
It-
And the answer to that question is, it depends.
Uh-huh.
It depends on the child, it depends on the relationship, it depends on the support we have from the parent. It depends on all those factors. And so once we sort of get all those factors on the table, then we're in a better position to help a child improve his behavior or her behavior.
Keeping this basically first step at the school allows you to do exactly what you said, making the punishment fit whatever the infraction was.
Exactly.
When you, in the past, when we went past that and went, let's say, directly to the board has to more or less go by the rules that are written down, and they don't have that ability that we have now at the school level to say, hey, wait a minute, this.
Yeah,
You know, with the parent, with the teachers,
Right.
and with the principal.
Yeah, the board's responsibility is primary policy, setting policy, but they don't manage day-to-day operations. So staff, so really this is a best practice. If the board sets the code of conduct, staff impose, manage the policy set by the board. So this simply allows us to operate through a sort of a best practice model of what should happen when a student misbehaves. And that is, the staff most connected to that student should manage it.
And from what I'm hearing from chatter, let's call it chatter, is that principals feel like this is giving them the opportunity to have more contact with parents and to
Right.
have more contact with students, and to allow them to change that behavior.
Absolutely. It's about empowering not only our
Yeah.
staff, but also our students.
I mean, in other words, it's not a negative thing
No.
for them.
Not at all.
We also, changing subjects again, we had some graduation rate news.
Yes, we did.
And that's been for us a multi-year battle,
Well,
to hear
it's-
this good news.
Yeah, and of course I have to first qualify. I had nothing to do with it since I've only been here 5 months.
I'm still going to give you bragging rights.
But very good news that our graduation rate did creep up a little bit. The challenge is to sustain that. And part of what we just finished talking about, the discipline piece, is a direct factor on that. Students aren't going to graduate if they're not in school.
That statement that you just made, it sounds like, well, tell me, I knew that.
Right.
That's so important. If you're not here,
It's
you're
hard to
not-
graduate.
Yeah.
So I want to commend our staff for what they've done to try to ensure that we identify those students who are less likely to graduate.
Didn't we have less dropouts too? Some change in that?
We did.
Less dropping out?
We did, but again, that's an area of continuous improvement. That's a place where we're going to have to continue to focus our resources and strategies.
But couldn't that also be connected to this behavior thing that we've been
It could
talking
be.
about? Success in school, you're not going to drop out if you're successful,
Exactly.
or if you're in a place where you feel comfortable.
Well, you know, in our community, if students feel disengaged and disconnected from the school, then they're not going to pay attention in class, and as a result of that, that's what leads to truancy or attendance problems. And attendance problems, if you look at all of our issues with discipline, probably the biggest one is attendance.
Oh, yeah. And I think what you just said there when you were talking is mainly, and we talked about this in the beginning of the year, you brought it up when we were talking about, you know, the things that you wanted to do, the culture of the school, the culture of when that child is in school, how they feel about that school, how do they feel protected? Is this a place I can come to? Is this a good place? If it's a threatening place, if it's a place that makes me unhappy, this is when things go wrong.
Exactly.
So the culture of our whole school district,
It's critical.
but the culture of the school and the culture of the classroom.
Absolutely, and I don't want to get too deep here, but you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
students feeling safe.
Yes.
If those issues aren't addressed, then students are not going to learn.
You
And
don't,
so,
you don't
so
move
school,
up the hierarchy.
exactly. So school culture and climate have a tremendous impact on student behavior and student engagement.
And on teachers
Exactly.
and the rest of the staff.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
very-
It's
and-
critical. And when we're evaluating, when we start talking about school performance, often those are not measures. School culture and climate are often measures we don't talk about. We talk about achievement scores, but we don't talk about those qualitative measures like, you know, school culture, climate, how students feel connected to school. Those things are critical to the success of not only our students, but our staff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Creating that culture, that positive culture, that nurturing culture.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the machining lab. And I think I understand what I mean, what it is, but it's going to be another path for our students out into the work world.
Correct.
Now, this is something that isn't going to start until next year, is it?
Correct. Precision machinery is this whole question of college or career readiness. And so this is a career readiness path where students, you know, technology has changed. Manufacturing has changed drastically. Used to be, you know, you got dirty and dusty and grimy when you worked in a manufacturing lab. Now, technology is really infused with designing parts for machines, et cetera. So the Precision Machinery Lab, it's hard to say that, is a program through Danville Community College that will enable students to develop a skill set for designing machine parts and parts for all kinds of technology. What we're looking to do is to leverage that opportunity at George Washington High School, so students can go through George Washington High School, receive dual enrollment credit,
That's what I was going to ask you.
graduate with career credentials in precision machinery, and graduate gainfully employed.
We did a show recently and talked with a representative from DCC about dual enrollment, and I think that is something that's really unique. That means that they can have college credit, or in the case of the machine, precision machining, you're right, that is not easy
hard to say.
In that case, a certification or whatever's going to come out of that, but through dual enrollment in different things other than the machining lab, we're able to give our students college credit.
Exactly.
And that's another example of, we talked in the beginning of the show of you going out and working with the Averets of this world
Right.
and the DCCs,
Right.
because these things come to us.
Right.
And that's really neat.
Right.
So this is a program that's going to start next year.
Well, there's one caveat though. We are pursuing funding through the Tobacco Commission
Okay.
for that program. So if it's funded, it's a program that will start next year.
Next year.
We should know in January whether or not we will receive funding through the Tobacco Commission for this initiative. It's really the Precision Machinery program is really an economic development initiative through the city, but it's a partnership between Danville Community College, the City of Danville, and Danville Public Schools.
But it helps all of those entities, and it helps people that you didn't even mention that are sitting out in our community to bring industries here, because we have an employable community.
Exactly, and that program will not only focus on our current students, but also our adult learners. Folks in the community who want to pursue this as adult learners, there'll be an opportunity through the adult educational program for them to also participate in the precision machinery.
I don't know the exact percentages, but I do know that over the past years and into the future, that 4-year college degree is not quite what it used to be. There are many jobs out there, many good paying jobs that call for coming out of school with a certificate in machining.
Exactly.
Our auto mechanic type thing
Right.
that we have at GW.
Right.
Many of these programs mean that we can turn students out of high school that can be employed
Right.
or may not need but a year or 2 years of some post-secondary work.
Exactly.
So it's a different way of looking at the ultimate beyond high school education.
There's some futurists who predict that the types of jobs that are required in the future are not necessarily ones that are going to require a college degree.
Right.
They certainly
It's
require
that
a particular
technology.
skill, and so the goal of a public school system then is to make sure that students are college and career ready, and by having the dual enrollment programs in our schools, we provide that opportunity for students.
It's amazing how many programs we have here in Danville Public Schools that lead to a job.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily lead to college unless you want to go to college, but lead to a job, and that's important. I have more things for us to talk about, and as usual, we've talked beyond the time that we have to do it. So I'm going to save the issue of our teachers and staff development and some other things until we do the next quarterly show.
Okay.
And talk about what you found out. I want to say thank you for giving me your time today. Thank you for the work that you've been doing. There's some really good buzz out there about our school system, and that makes us all feel proud.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and 3 more months,
3 more months,
and you're going to come back.
I'm going to come back.
You're going to come back, and we're going to talk
And
about
hopefully
what's
3 months after that, and 3 months after that. Hopefully I'll keep coming back.
A good point, good point. I want to thank you so much for being with us today and hearing about what's happened in the last 3 or 4 months. And we're also going to do this again for the next quarter and find out what's been going on. Thanks for being with us, and be sure to come back because we've always got something new going on in Danville Public Schools.